Good morning or afternoon, depending on the part of the country that you come from. Welcome to today's Topic Talk. My name is Constance Harrington. I'm the Education and Accreditation Manager for Shift, and we're very proud to bring you this continuing education opportunity. In today's Topic Talk, our panelists will be sharing what they've learned as part of their research and their experience in relation to universal design for people with developmental disabilities. Now, if you do happen to have any questions for our panelists, please submit them in the Q&A field. We'll be happy to ask those questions on your behalf as time permits. I'd like to take just a few moments to introduce our subject matter experts today. I had an opportunity to meet Wanda Crocker at a technology conference in Kansas City a number of years ago. And I have to tell you, from the very beginning, Wanda has been so passionate about service delivery through technology. I'm very excited to welcome her here today. And then in 2020, a dedicated Universal Design and Assistive Technology team was created to focus on the division's Technology First initiative in Missouri. And the team lead, Shelly Brown, also with us today, is going to be talking a little bit about that team. So we're very excited to have both Wanda and Shelly joining us today. With that, I'll go ahead and turn things over to them.
To take it back a little bit further, I think a number of people on this call probably I've had conversations with before through our enabling technology efforts. And I know a lot of us focus on the ET. And so when we had the opportunity to design a dedicated team to enabling technologies, we also looked at what other services seem to be a good fit, so that the team wasn't just looking at one aspect of the person's life, but at a holistic approach to their environment. We looked at what other services that we had that might be good companions, and we were looking at building initially, right, our justification for why we need enabling technologists specialists, why we need this specialized team. And so from that kind of grew the concept of pairing environmental accessibility with the enabling technologies. And that kind of pairs into the universal term of a universal design, which really encompasses both the EAA and the ET. A lot of times when people just focus on one service, one subject, and they go out, that means that they ignore all the other things that could be solutions in that person's home. Enabling technology, we know, has a lot of amazing aspects, but it doesn't solve every problem. A lot of times it's core issues with the environment that they can't access, and sometimes it's a combination of both. And so we decided to pair the universal design with the ET to promote a team that when they go out can look at, or when they're talking to people, can talk about the environment as a whole and all of the things that could contribute towards the person being successful in their home. So often our support coordinators are focused on the direct support professional world. What physical help does the person need? And that oversight, we forget to look at, sometimes it's just basic environmental things. So this team supports the support coordinators, too many supports, but they're out there working with support coordinators and with stakeholders to bring awareness to how the entire environment as a package is impacting the person's life. And by looking at that environment, whether it's modifications to the home and or utilizing technology, it can make that a world of difference in the person's life and keep them where they're at and less reliant on paid people to provide their supports. And so far, it's been a really phenomenal experience. And through Shelly's advocacy, we've seen a change in our EAA service definition, how we prioritize that service, the increased awareness to how that impacts people's homes. So it's been a very good pairing. So hopefully that's an intro to what we're doing. Constance, I think you're on mute.
My apologies for that.
I was thinking it was connectivity issues, but then I realized you were on mute.
Thanks, Wanda. I don't want to go too far off track here, but I'm curious, would you mind just telling us a little bit about how you were able to garner the support for establishing a team kind of this magnitude?
So, our division has been a technology first organization for many years, but like a lot of states, we couldn't grow the number of FTEs we have. We couldn't just add bodies for an initiative. So we had to look at, and we still are looking at ways we could utilize the people we have through efficiency and through redesign. So up to us to look at the manpower we have to figure out how we could do things differently and more efficiently to carve out the FTEs for this position. So our entire division is going through what we call organizational efficiency or redesign, and unit by unit, we're looking at how does this unit function? And therefore, are we freeing up bodies to be able to take on some of these initiatives or other things that we currently don't have the resources for? So previous to this position, I was a director of our provider relations unit, and Shelly was a supervisor over provider relations. And that team encompasses providing technical assistance on every service in our service definition. And of course, that means that our direct support professional world being the biggest ability to focus on enabling technology, on EAA, on many of our services. And so we identified through our org efficiency examination that that was missing, that there was no way, if we continued the construct we had, that everybody could do everything and be the expert on every service. So that led to the big service delivery, right? How many people do we need dedicated to DSP, and how many people could we carve out to do enabling technology? And so we started out, actually, at first, we thought we were only going to get one person, and other units were going through org efficiency at the same time. And through working with them, we were able to find a person in another unit who was already doing a lot of work around universal design and had a passion for it. And we were able to kind of negotiate and pull him over. And then through some luck of draw, we had offered resources to them that they didn't utilize. So we got to keep those resources and then expand and add another member to the team. So we started out with 3 team members. Then we had this idea through Shelly's experience and the team's experience that a lot of our environmental accessibility requests were being combined with specialized medical equipment. So, but in addition to the home modification, we also need this durable medical equipment to accompany that. And our support coordinators were getting confused about what fell under which house. And so when we had a vacancy on our team, on one of our other teams that focused on DSPs, we evaluated if we pulled over the durable medical equipment or specialized medical equipment into our universal design concept, could we pull another body? And we could. And that way, so this team now focuses on 3 services in our catalog: our environmental accessibility, our specialized medical equipment, and our assistive technology, because we found that people would constantly get them confused as to what piece fell under which service, what category, and they were sending it all into this team anyway. And so slowly we're just evaluating what makes sense on our universal design. And then when we have the opportunity to repurpose positions, we repurpose them to this team. So now we have a team of 4. And that was really, that's really new. We just got that 4th person a few months back from a retirement, and we repurposed the position into this team. So as many states, as I said, we're not going to be able to go to our and advocate that we need 10 FTEs to focus on this effort. And so we're finding paths to create them through our own efficiency. And every unit is going through that. And so, it's my hope that as we continue to find those efficiencies and each unit goes through that, we'll have the data to justify building this team and making it more. It's just going to take us a little bit of time to get there because everybody's in different stages of evaluation.
Wow, what a clever way to go about that, Wanda. That's pretty cool. I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's really interesting. You're talking about people are kind of struggling with the concept of definitions, that there's a lot of different definitions out there: enabling technology, assistive technology, specialized medical equipment, durable medical equipment. And I think you're absolutely right. We see that especially, provider organizations, case coordination agencies get very confused by the terminology, and they have difficulty sorting out which is which. So I think it's really clever how you just said, we're just going to combine that all here. We're going to deal with it all here. And then that way the folks don't have to necessarily differentiate between all of those different categories. So very clever. It looks like Holly has joined us.
Good morning.
Holly just
Thank
came
you
back
for
from
having me.
vacay.
I did, and I was on another meeting. We were having a great discussion about transportation needs, so I didn't want to cut it short. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Holly. I feel bad. I want to give you just a few seconds to do your own introduction. Wanda and Shelly have had a chance to kind of hear the voices heard, but I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what role you play on the team.
So my name is Holly Reiff. I'm the Director of Provider Relations, and previously I was the subject matter expert for our Technology First initiative movement within the division. So supporting the Universal Design and Assistive Technology team in really laying some groundwork and providing some technical assistance and understanding, as well as consultation on all types of assistive technology, as well as just getting the word out and providing some education, partnering with Shift to provide education that was sorely needed for our support coordinators so that they could have intelligent conversations with families when they were doing ISP or individualized service planning to really support the individual to achieve their best life outcomes.
Great. Thank you so much for piping up there, Holly. Appreciate it. I guess, we can dive in and kind of go any direction that you gals would like to go. Maybe a place we could start is just talking about maybe what some of the challenges are that you have faced in relation to universal design. Is that a fair place to go?
And I think I'll toss this one over to Shelly. Surprise, Shelly.
Yeah.
Maybe to talk about what you found when we started looking at the EAA service and the limitation we had and what that meant for our families, and maybe how you went about impacting that and changing it.
Yeah. I think one thing with universal design and even with EAA and enabling technologies is that there's a vast definition category out there, and everybody was creating their own definition of what that service actually looked like. And so we tried to hone that in a little bit and make the definition more specific, but also wanted to use it so that it could be individualized to each individual that was requesting that service. And so I think our first step was to really educate folks on what the service was, what the service could do, and how to use the service. We found that a lot of individuals with our service coordination teams were really overwhelmed with that process. And I think human nature kicks in, and when you're overwhelmed and don't understand, you set that aside and pick from the list and what you're comfortable with. And that's what we found people were doing. So we've tried to provide this consultation, we've tried to provide this education to get the information out there as to how this service can work, how it benefits individuals, and that you'll have someone working alongside you to ensure that there's a successful outcome. And our team really tries to provide that support and come in any of those conflictual situations or situations that maybe just need some further mediation. So I think that's the biggest thing we have right now, is really going back to recognizing education was initially needed, but it's also just going to be a continuing spectrum that we're always going to perform from this team. And then really trying to provide those supports and show that this service really isn't as overwhelming and difficult. And Shift has been wonderful in really being able to allow us to focus on where do we start with discussions on technology. You know, it's one of those situations when you're overwhelmed, you don't even know where to begin. But the shift classes have really given us that opportunity to allow us to begin that facilitation. So in the midst of my rambling, I guess what I'm trying to get to is just really there's always going to be that education piece and making sure people feel comfortable with the service and comfortable with our group so that we can see that it comes to fruition.
And one of the things Shelly encountered very early on, as Holly had mentioned, she was first specializing in our technology first, and Shelly was really focusing and specializing on our EAA service delivery. And then as we traveled along and built some foundations, they started to blend those and now are blended. But one of the challenges that we found right away, and you guys will probably maybe laugh at us because I know some of our service limitations are much more generous than other states. So our environmental accessibility adaptation cap was 7,500 with a hard cap of 10,000. Well, with inflation of, and you'll probably say, oh my gosh, well, mine's only 3 or mine's only 5. So if anybody has tried to do a bathroom modification so that someone has universal access to their bathroom and can meet their own needs, you know it can't be done for under $7,000. During COVID, we've seen such a price hike in supplies and demands that Shelly did a really great job working with our contractor to look at the inflationary costs of just supplies during COVID and how much wood just skyrocketed, and showed that our division leadership that we couldn't do a quality service in a true home modification, even for a room as small as a bathroom, to give people universal access and ability to provide for themselves instead of relying on paid staff for $7,500. And so she was able to put that trajectory together and show the data of how the costs had changed. And we were able to amend our waiver so that now we have a $20,000 cap across 2 years. So if that sounds what Wanda, you have $10,000 a year, it's still $10,000 a year. That means that they can use 20,000 in 1 year and get everything that they need, but then they have to wait 2 years to be eligible for another 20,000. So we're also working on pulling our remote support out of, many of you have already done this, out of our assistive technology service definition and setting it aside and setting it with its own cap, separate from assistive technology, which will help people get access to more service, right? Then they can have the remote support. It has its own definition, its own cap. Then there's assistive technology additions, and then there's EAA. So we just recognized early on, this team really brought to fruition that our service caps were not people's needs, that they weren't sufficient for a contractor to go in and really do a good job and use quality products at the rate that we were offering. And it limited what we could purchase on behalf of people in enabling technology, because we also had that $7,500, $10,000 limit there. So by pulling pieces of it out, it's going to make everything more accessible and people be able to get a job done and their environment evaluated and many things addressed at once, instead of having to, well, this year I can do this, and this year I can do that, and this year I can do this, which is just frustrating for our families and individuals who need those things so badly. So I'd really credit this team to making those things happen. It just collecting the data, showing the evidence. We can't do right by families if our caps are this low. And we're going to lose contractors. Contractors were leaving because they couldn't do a good job. So I thought that would be interesting to share. Is it's not just about allocating the physical resources to educate people and put the foundation in place. If your service itself is capped so low that you can do so little for families and it takes them 5 years to get all of their needs met, you're increasing the risk that they're going to be using more paid physical service delivery, or that they're going to have to seek out residential services because their environment doesn't work for them. So we're trying to come at it from a different approach and making sure families have what they need in their home to be successful. And that meant really taking a hard look at our cap and advocating for change.
Understanding correctly, your cap actually includes all technologies, home modifications, and durable medical equipment right now. Is that correct?
Different service. There's still different services with different caps. So our environmental accessibility, the home or vehicle modification, has a cap of 20,000 across 2 years. Our durable medical equipment is, correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, it's still 7,500. And our technology, enabling technology has increased, but it's still insufficient to support the cost that we're paying for remote support, which our remote support vendors bill the state directly for that waiver. It's not a pass through the residential or community provider. So it's a little different design than some other entities or states have. So, I mean, altogether, they're looking right now at having a $40,000 cap between those 3 services. And when we pull remote support out into its own, it will, Holly, I don't remember what cap we set for that, but I want to say it was like 36,000, because we have some families that are not using any paid staff. Their delivery is through natural supports and remote supports. And that's a lot of hours and a lot of remote technology. So that costs more money. So.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. And if you've got it combined with, I was curious about that. If you've got it combined with other types of enabling technologies, then you may run into a situation of, if a person has remote supports, then maybe there's another type of technology that's above and beyond that they're unable to afford because they've already reached their cap, which makes
Right.
perfect sense. Well,
Right.
really interesting for how you're structured. It's pretty cool that you've been able to advocate for some of those changes and get some of those things made.
Mm-hmm.
I am curious. Again, I'm not trying to divert too much from our personal path, but I'm so interested in learning how you're approaching things. Shelly, earlier you talked a little bit about education and the importance of that. I'm curious about how your ISPs are handled. So have you integrated technology directly into your ISPs or made any requirements there? Or what does that look like at this point in time?
And so Holly might be able to better answer. We don't necessarily have technology as a requirement of ISP, but we do encourage that discussion to happen when you're discussing services or at your annual ISP. And so right now we're trying to just get folks comfortable with having those discussions. Service coordinators maybe are not even aware of what the technology could consist of, and that it doesn't even have to include us. It could be low tech devices that is just discussed at the table. It doesn't have to have our representation there. And so I think really this education of trying to get folks to consider technology before they consider other services is something that that Holly was really promoting through the past year and has taken off. And now those discussions are happening. And as she indicated, we are being asked to come in and provide some consultative efforts to those discussions. So I think education is kind of a big term too, and that we have some families that are more educated than perhaps the service coordinator when it comes to technology, and then vice versa. So trying to bring both those entities up to the same level so that these discussions can be occurring is where the focus tends to lie right now.
And we are changing that, Constance. We are, just because I see your name, so it feels wrong to call you Connie, because I can see your full name. We are currently, for the last several years, have been working on a new information management system. And that is supposed to go live in October. And in that information management system is the ISP or individualized support plan is built into that system. And so when we built it, we went through and what are required components, what are required topics. And one of those will be when we go live, there is a whole section on enabling supports. And not just identifying what supports they're using from the division, but maybe they're using supports that they purchased on their own. Well, if they're using technology that they've purchased on the market on their own, well, the people, their natural supports and their paid supports need to understand how that device supports them and how they then can support the person. So we have a section now specifically for that they have to, it won't be an option, they won't be able to skip it for enabling technology at large and for remote supports. I don't know, I'm trying to remember because it's coming out in October, but I actually built those parts of the ISP like 2 years ago. So trying to remember, but we will, you know, when you develop a new information management system, you have to use that incarnation for 6 months to get it certified by CMS before you can make changes. So we're already developing a list of what are enhancements when we can go back in and enhance. And one of those needs to be our environmental scan. And I don't think we built that into our first incarnation, but that will be coming too. Just using the ISP as a tool to guide support coordinators on that conversation and lead them through what kind of questions should I ask about their environmental needs. Because even though we've had environmental accessibility in our waiver for many years, the utilization was actually pretty small. And considering we have 16,000 people in our waiver, that was really shocking because obviously families have a lot of environmental needs. We've seen an uptick since we've developed this team. We've seen an uptick again since we've increased our cap. And so part of it might just have been, you don't have enough. You're not going to give me enough to do what I need to do. So I'm not going to bother. And so we're getting there with of the ISP as we build this new system that's supposed to go live in October.
Awesome. You know, I think one of the things that it's maybe you can offer some advice on here is, first of all, it's wonderful that you're doing that with the ISP. It's really great to see you integrating that directly into the plans, which is nice. I do understand. I think it was Shelly who had said that people have different levels of knowledge, depending on, where they come from. Some parents know a lot more than, the service coordinators know more than the providers. Have any of you seen creative, outside of Shift, of course, but have any of you seen creative education efforts that are being made by providers or state organizations, case management companies to help kind of bridge that gap and build the knowledge amongst those groups of people?
So we've actually done a lot of education efforts around that. Connie was able to join us for our technology summit in 2022. We're working with some partners to get in-person technology festivals back in place so that people can have some more hands-on learning. We've partnered with our vocational rehab services to provide a what we call Technology Explorers coaching session, where we bring in some local experts from Missouri Assistive Technology, and they come and ask questions. Just, hey, we're supporting someone who needs help at their work because they can't stay on task, but they can use their smartphone. What ideas do you have that we can maybe use the technology that they're already comfortable with to be more successful in their work? But the service coordinators also attend that, so they hear and share different ideas, which has really helped promote it. We've been able to talk, both Shelly and I, with provider groups about universal design. And so that was always our good conversations to get directly to the folks who really need the technology.
And as far as our providers developing their own, so what we're experiencing thus far is that many of the TCM entities are relying on our team to develop the message, to develop the material. Now we do have, there's one organization in St. Louis who actually developed a grant around technology. And so they took that initiative and they asked for our input and recommendations for participants. And many of our technology vendors will put together training curriculum and have it available, but it's optional training material. You still have to get the audience to get out there and take the time to participate, to enhance their knowledge. So one of the things I am hoping to do, maybe a little differently, I think many people are aware that Missouri currently has 9 value-based payments. that we've implemented, and one of them is actually for support coordinators. So in a future incarnation, I am advocating for a value-based payment around enhanced training for support coordinators. So right now we have a value-based payment for enhanced training around direct support professionals, and some of the curriculum in that does include curriculum around technology, but we don't have a similar value-based payment for support coordinators. So we are in the process of trying to get support coordination caseloads down so that they then can make time to enhance their knowledge and training around a variety of service deliveries. So it's my hope that someday in the future, we can incentivize for enhanced training, comprehension, and somehow implementation. A lot of families and providers who are interested. And quite honestly, some of them have gotten pushback from their support coordinators who don't understand it or are too afraid of the risks involved. So we need that enhanced training to get that buy-in so they can do their part. But right now they are primarily relying on us to deliver the material. And more of our technology providers would deliver it and make it available and have it available, but they're not getting the audience that they are looking for. So we're trying to impact that audience base.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious if you can talk just for a few more moments. You said people are hesitant sometimes because of the risks involved. Tell me a little bit about how you've approached that, or yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there. Tell me a little bit more.
I just pick up my big stick. Yeah, no, I'm joking. I tell you, it is an ongoing. So I know every division does things differently, right? But so our support coordinators put together proposals, and then they submit those to what's called a utilization review committee for anything that is an initial service request or anything that increases their overall budget. So even though we focus on support coordinators because they're the front liner, it's not just there. Things get to utilization review, or they get to our due process committee or our human rights committee, and they stop and they say, well, I don't understand this technology. I don't understand how it's supposed to do this. I need more information. So it is continually, it's not just the primary players, all of these other people that have a role in approving that ISP or reviewing it need that education as well, so that they can all be on the same page and not putting up barriers. I think every state struggles with the risk. I mean, we've been taught that's not new terminology. We've been talking about dignity of risk for decades, but we're still combating that fear and protect mode. They still don't understand that, no, the remote support can't guarantee you nothing bad is ever going to happen. But if the person wants it, what do you put into place to make sure that your best effort to mitigate those situations? And what do you do to train them? And what do you do to this? And it's just that continual reinforcement. I wish there was some magic wand to get people just to understand that, but it's just a slow going process that we've said dignity of risk for decades, but we've not really pushed people into embracing it. So decisions are still made for people.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. I would like to pause for just a second because we do have a question from one of our attendees. What local organizations, vendors, or agencies have you been able to partner with to expand and support your efforts with universal design?
So all of our contracted providers have been great partners, as well as our sister organizations. So we have targeted case management groups. They're called MAC DDS, but I'm not going to be able to tell you what that stands for. And it's a group of all of our TCM providers, or targeted case management providers, and they've supported lots of technology efforts. They've invited Universal Design and Assistive Technology to be at their conferences and speak with their support coordinators. So that's been a huge partnership, partnering with Voc Rehab and our Department of Health and Senior Services, as well as our Institute for Human Development. So University of Missouri, Kansas City has an Institute for Human Development. We've been working with them to grow the movement, grow some base training that can be universally applied to all areas of the state. So we also have a great partnership with the ARC, who have a grant called Life Tech, and they are supporting all of our efforts for folks who don't qualify for our waiver services. So they're basically taking the universal design model and applying it for those folks who don't quite qualify yet for waiver services or may never. So we're kind of covering it from both sides there with that partnership. And of course, our Missouri Assistive Technology company is amazing. I know every state has one, but I don't know that every state has one quite like ours. They provide a lending library and consultations as well. So through those partnerships, we've really been able to make some headway in education and promoting technology first as a solution.
And as wonderful as we all those promote, because you guys are just singing, you know, success, and we are being successful, but we also recognize that our system is very complicated. Any Medicaid system is going to be. So many times when we go to talk to partners in the community, like, don't know if you all have them too, semi-independent living locations, they in our state are with Health and Senior Services, and they also operate the self-directed waiver, and they also have EAA in their definition, but their service cap is so small that it's difficult for them to imagine and come where we're at. They see the barriers that we put into place, not necessarily the successes that we've had, because they can't imagine having a budget like ours. So so sometimes it's also, you know, we've tried, Shelly has tried share our vendors, and because our process is Medicaid based, that means to enroll as a service provider with us is more complicated than enrolling with some of those community agencies. So that's a challenge because things, even though we're all in the same effort, it's not apples to apples. We all have different parameters, different groundwork, different limitations. And so getting to a place where we can share our success and show why it works perhaps will help those other stakeholders and those other entities realize how much more they could do. But then you have to figure out how to get them to budget to be able to do it. And unfortunately, as one of my peers says, stuff costs money. Nobody thinks of it, right? And so it's also about having the allocation to be able to do what we're doing. And many of our stakeholders don't have those same resources. So that's somehow a challenge, sometimes a challenge when we're brainstorming and talking, because it seems just out of their reach. So it's just a continuum of trying to get us all to where we can do similar, same, get on the same page.
Thank you so much for sharing some of those resources and challenges. I'm curious if I know you've talked about a few so far, but would you add that any other current trends in the area of universal design that you'd like to tell our attendees about?
I'm going to tag one of those two ladies because they're more in.
I think as far as universal design, you know, even that's such a vast definition that can be used in different ways. And here in Missouri, we're kind of encompassing that to a comprehensive view of an individual's home that could be heavy on the enabling tech, or it could be heavier on the home modification, but really trying to get people to understand that universal design is a comprehensive approach. So we're looking at what we can do outside of maybe standard services that were so easy to select off the list. What can we do to help that person stay, maybe remain in their home, become more independent in their home, or less dependent maybe on staff? And so I think really trying to get the approach out there that universal design is something that can be used by everyone. So we're not coming in to modify a home in order to make it difficult for the other individuals living there. It should just flow and streamline so that every person who's accessing that home, whether they're a housemate, a roommate, a parent, a caregiver, actually the universal design approach allows them to benefit from those advancements as well. They're primarily catered towards the individual, but we do see that it benefits everyone who's living in the home. So I think it's trying to really get that terminology across and understand that this is kind of a new approach to take when you're visiting a home, when you're working with families, rather than just looking down the standard list of services that might be available.
And to tap into that, one of the things that we've seen, and so we still have boundaries in our service definition, right? We still just can't do everything and anything. It still has to connect to the service definition. For example, our EAA prohibits us from doing maintenance work on a home, from repairing a home due to damage, not related to an accessibility issue for the individual. So a big trend we've seen is people asking or trying to justify using EAA for things that are really about remediation of the home itself. We also frequently run into where people want to use EAA for not accessibility, but because of behaviors. The person is damaged, so they want to use EAA to protect the property instead of the appropriate services that person needs to learn to deal with those behaviors, and that the caregiver needs to learn to deal and operate so that the damage isn't being done. So that's a trend that we've seen since this team has come on, that before, with everybody across the state doing their own thing and no centralized place for information to go for review, we didn't realize how many people were using the service incorrectly, because there wasn't that repository of expertise to say that's not actually what's in the definition. So, so that's one of the trends that we're combating with education and effort, is just helping people understand the intent, because it was loosely being utilized before. So redrawing those lines and expectations, and then, you know, when we have the opportunity to amend our waiver definition, making the definition clearer so that people really understand what that service is about. And the team does a really good job. It's not like Shelly just says, nope, can't do that. But they take that opportunity to educate on why that doesn't fit the definition and what alternatives. That's the benefit of these members coming from provider relations at large, who was responsible for every definition in the book. They have a foundation of all the service definitions. They just focus in 3. And so that allows them to say, have you made a referral to a BCBA? You know, are you doing this? You know, just to give them other ideas for resources when they're coming to us for something that does not fit the definition. It's not the intent of the definition. So just to clarify that, because we would love to just be able to go in and, man, this carpet's old, man, this is old and it's got stains. So we're just going to come in here and use our EAA and just replace it all. We can't do those things. It's not a magic wand. So we still do have boundaries and parameters that focus on accessibility to the home so they can operate. So that's one of the trends we've really struggled with, is just learning, because the team is new, but just learning about all these inappropriate decisions of the past, and then trying to mitigate that and correct that. So that was a real eye-opener for us when we started collecting data and looking at it, how many people were going outside the boundaries of the service design. I'm sure other people probably have that. It's always possible. You have so many people across the state. You know, when you have so many support coordinators and so many families and so many different UR chairs and so many rights restrictions, you know, human rights meetings and due process meetings, all these people, you're always going to have different interpretation in a variety. So this team is essential to getting us all on the same page and understanding what we can and cannot do within our service definitions. And that's tough, because boy, people don't like boundaries sometimes, right? They're used to being super flexible. So bringing some of that back in, and so that, one, you know, we all have to use our service definitions as intended. We all have to abide by those parameters and boundaries, or change them. So we're learning about what do we need to tighten down and what do we need to be more flexible on. And that's kind of the exploration of this team in being the subject matter experts on a smaller subset instead of everything.
So I have one final question for you. I know that our time is running out, but would you be able to offer any tips, advice, or recommendations to providers or state agencies who are looking to further their success in the arena of technology first?
My first thing I always say, you can say you're technology first, but if you don't allocate the resources, you're really not. So you got to start somewhere, but you really have to do that introspection into have I given the resources that I need to technology first to really make an impact on my state? And that's where we were backwards. We said, hey, I'm technology first because we believed in it, was our philosophy, but we had not allocated the manpower to make it happen. And so, I mean, that's always my first thing. If you don't allocate your manpower, you're not going to lift off very quickly, if at all. The other thing that I was thinking of, and it just came like right in my brain and right out of my brain that I was thinking of. So I'll pass it to them and maybe it'll come back to me, but that's always my number one. Shelly, Holly, what are your thoughts or tips?
I think it can kind of piggyback with what Wanda was saying, that even though if you allocate those positions, there has to be an understanding of them. And I think that was the other thing we recognized is even though we had these services available, nobody really understood how to use them or how to use them correctly, perhaps, or what the intent was behind them. So I think I've learned in this last year, education, and it's at a different pace. And every person you meet, you're going to have to cater your education presentation accordingly, because you don't know where their baseline is. So I think sometimes we take 2 steps forward only to take 3 steps back. Sometimes we get information, well, I didn't even know your team was here. Well, and then the next person has already been established that we work with, and they've been through our processes numerous times. So I think education is going to be the one thing we will continue to always do and try to do creatively. And try to get that information out there so that if nothing else, we can get people to start initiating those conversations. So that's kind of been my focus in everything I've said today, so I think I'll end it that way too, that education is a slower process and maybe a more tedious process than what we had originally thought it would be.
I would just echo both of those statements. We've seen a huge growth in our assistive technology services over since UDAT was designed and implemented. And I think that just has a lot to do with communication and letting people know it's out there. I've run into a lot of folks who are like, what? The waiver can do that? So that's an education piece that I think is hugely important as well.
Well, unfortunately, I hate to say it, we are out of time, almost out of time. If there are is there anyone have a pressing question? You can go ahead and pipe up or put your thoughts in the chat now. Otherwise, you'll have to forever hold your peace. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody typing super quickly, so I wanted to go ahead and just take an opportunity to show our gratitude, to Wanda, Holly, Shelly. Thank you for being here today, sharing your wisdom, your expertise, and your experience with the Shift family of learners. We really appreciate everyone being here today, and we look forward to having additional conversations as the months go by.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Okay, take care.